All right, here we go. It is great to have you here with us on a Monday evening. Good evening, baseball fans. This is the Bicoastal Baseball podcast on the Grid Network. I am Mike Guido. That is Dalton Brown, donning the Twins cap this evening. Dalton, how you doing, my friend?
It's a big week for the Twins. I'll tell you that much, and we'll get into that plenty as we go along. But I'm doing well. I'm exhausted. Work has been exhausting.
Yeah.
We got football season, which I put a lot into football as well. I have a couple other shows that I do that are football oriented. So just a lot going on in general. But man, what an exciting time on the baseball calendar, and a lot of nerves in a lot of parts of the country right now.
Yeah, certainly. Speaking of football, by the way, the Bills right now. I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan, but I love the Buffalo Bills. Also, my mom grew up in Buffalo, so I have a soft spot for the Bills as well. They're up 13-0 on the Jags right now in Buffalo, so I love that. I don't know. You gotta. I asked you this last week, so I might as well ask you it again. You got a bonus bet this week for football or no?
I mean, I'm on the Commanders tonight plus the 7.5. I just don't think Cincinnati has shown a great ability to get margin yet. I think we're in a spot here where, I think Jaden Daniels can do enough to keep Washington in that game. So, little something.
See, there you go. This is what we do, Dalton Brown. We provide value to the listener. I think that's what everybody wants. By the way, Jackson Despain right here, Twins hat questionable. And he says he needs an explanation. So I know that's your buddy. So
he should know better. I mean, he knows that one of my best friends works in the front office for the Twins, and if he doesn't know, he knows it now.
Yeah. So we have plenty of stuff to go over today. Obviously, it's the final playoff push last week of the regular season. A bunch of spots still seemingly in the air. So we will discuss virtually all of that. Coming up in the 1-2-3 inning a little bit later, the Dodgers and the Padres, they're fighting for the NL West. They have a series coming up this week that could decide the division. Dodgers right now with a 3-game lead in the division. We'll see if the Padres can catch up to them and maybe steal the West from the Dodgers. We'll discuss that. The Tigers, the Royals, and the Twins are all in it for 2 spots. And might I even include the Mariners in that respect, sitting only 2 games back of that final wild card spot as well in the American League. So we'll discuss that, see who gets in there. The Braves and the Mets seemingly fighting for it. And to be honest with you, even the Arizona Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks right now are tied with the Mets for those wild card spots. Again, 3 teams, 2 spots. Somebody's going to go home early. We'll discuss that as well. Also, by the way, we got some breaking news just as the show started. 14-year veteran Charlie Blackmon will retire after this season. 38 years old. I mean, it's just about that time. I mean, it wasn't too long ago where he was putting up really great numbers, but a great career for Charlie Blackmon as we wish him farewell for Major League Baseball. Dalton, I know you've seen him play a lot being in the NL West. Definitely, I would imagine, a thorn in your side in a lot of instances. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, he's been just a really solid player, really solid, respectable, above average career for him. So, certainly he's got a plenty to hold up his head high about, despite the fact that the Rockies didn't have a ton of success over his years. I'll tell you, as a Dodger fan, I won't miss him. I mean, he hit 2 home runs just this last weekend against the Dodgers. And hopefully his last weekend at Coors Field, he takes it a little bit easy on us. Although I have some tepid views on what I want the Dodgers to do this week, and I'll get into that in a moment.
I'm sure you will. Charlie Blackmon, a 4-time All-Star, has a batting title, 2-time Silver Slugger. I think you easily could have made the case for him to win the NL MVP in 2017. But again, that's neither here nor there. But all right, as we do every single week, we cater to our own fan bases. Sorry, not sorry. Yankees, Dodgers, here we go. Checking the comment. Checking the comment section again. Jackson at it again. Here we go. But anyway, so let's discuss this. So Yankees over the past week, 5-1 on a West Coast road trip. I love that. Okay, taking 2 out of 3 against the Mariners, then sweeping the A's. I think Okay, I'm good with that. Like, I don't know that I have any complaints. The one game they lost was against Logan Gilbert, and I think Logan Gilbert's one of the better pitchers in the game at this moment. So I'm not all that upset. And it really seems like they're playing well at the right time. And to be honest, it's been a few years where I've been able to say that, right? Like, I actually feel confident going into the postseason. Now, this Orioles series that is coming up, the Yankees right now have a 5-game lead on the Orioles in the AL East. 6 games. Sorry. So I think the division is pretty much all but locked up.
Yeah.
But playoff seeding still matters. So that's kind of where that series matters a little bit more. And I think that's a little bit of a weight off the Yankees' shoulders where they don't really have to worry about losing the division anymore. The Orioles really have not. I mean, ever since, the middle of the summer, the Orioles have really kind of been skidding and they haven't really been able to find their footing for a while. They're only 86 and 70 right now. I think a lot of people had much higher expectations for them. So that I think is something that the Yankees can hang their hat on, is that the division is more than likely theirs in a lot of cases. So that's the good news. The bullpen for the Yankees, I think, is the biggest story right now, just because I think despite the fact that it has gone pretty well over the last week or 2 weeks or so, I think fans are still worried. I think people are still kind of, worried about the fact that, all right, I don't know that we have a true closer. Jake Cousins, who has been really, really good for us, just went on the IL. Like, we're really kind of trying to piece things together. Again, like Canely and Tim Hill and Ian Hamilton came back. Okay, that's a piece. What do you do with Clay Holmes now? Like, it's a lot of these different things that is a little bit uneasy about the Yankees bullpen. I will say this though. Luke Weaver has really kind of stepped into that closer role for the Yankees and kind of dominated. Like, he's really pitched well in that role. I think he's taken it in stride. He's pitching with a lot of, might I say, attitude, a lot of fire. I think he's really kind of embraced that role. It doesn't seem too big for him. It's not comfortable going into a postseason with Luke Weaver, but it may just work out. Like, it actually might be okay, all things considered. Also for the bullpen, and hopefully this gives it a little bit of a boost. We do have an answer, and it's been about a week or two since this has happened, but Marcus Stroman right now is the odd man out in the rotation. He's full-time bullpen right now, towards the end of the year. I think we all kind of knew Rodon, Cole, and Luis Heel were not losing their spot in the rotation. Luis Heel, I think, was somebody that you could have questioned, but I think his walk rate really seemed to scare the Yankees away. They don't want to bring him in a late inning game, and he just doesn't have the control. They'd rather manage that early on in the game. So those guys were not being taken out of the rotation. Clark Schmidt, since he's come back, has kind of taken right where he left off. He's turned into a really solid, consistent starting pitcher. I don't think you could have pulled him out of the rotation. And, between Stroman and Nestor Cortez, I mean, Nestor has, over the last 3 starts, has pitched really, really well. So I don't think that you could have taken him out either. Stroman, I think, was the most expendable piece. And to be honest, he's kind of taken it in stride. I'm sure he doesn't love it, right? But so far publicly, he's kind of said, listen, I'll do whatever. You know what I mean? That's kind of the way that he's kind of approached it. So again, not much to complain about this week. We're looking at, again, not a terrible schedule. I think it's, obviously the series against the Orioles at home. And then we play Pittsburgh to close out the season. So just finish strong, finish the week. Listen, I wouldn't be against resting some guys in that Pittsburgh series if you feel comfortable with your playoff seeding. So we're in the home stretch, Dalton. I'm feeling okay right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Yankees are in the best spot you could really be in this type of season where there's so much parity around the league. I mean, it's laughable right now that the Dodgers have the best record in baseball at 93 and 63. Like, it doesn't feel like when I watch the Dodgers night in and night out, I don't feel like I'm watching the best team in baseball.
Yeah.
And this has kind of been one of those seasons. So, I think this is the kind of year where like you just find your way in, you win the division, you get in with one of the top 2 seeds, and you hopefully feel pretty good about it.
Yeah.
And the Yankees are pretty intact, all things considered. Like as far as injuries are concerned, they've got it pretty good. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely, they're going to be one of the favorites, and rightfully so. I think in the American League, the only team, if I'm a Yankee fan, that like really strikes fear is the Astros.
Yeah, I agree.
Because of the history there, and because of, we know what the Astros are in the postseason. So, that's kind of the big bad wolf. Otherwise, you've got those AL Central teams, and we'll see which ones it ends up being, that, are going to make a little bit of noise, but I feel like the Yankees feel good in those matchups. And even against the Orioles, I think there's just an experience difference. And we talked about it at the trade deadline. Baltimore not going out there and doing anything about the pitching situation has really hurt them. They got to a point where they had no choice but to DFA Craig Kimbrell, and that says a lot about where that team's at right now. So I think the Yankees are in a really good position to come out of the AL. If you ask me, I think it's probably going to be Yankees Astros in the ALCS. But we'll get into a little bit more as far as the AL Central teams as well later on in the show. A little bit on the Dodgers to kind of fill in my half of this. It's just like you don't come out of this last week feeling like they're playing good baseball at all, despite the fact that they went 4-2. It just feels like 4-2 when you're playing the Marlins and Rockies is just kind of like, I mean, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Shohei Ohtani went absolutely nuclear this week. I mean,
yeah.
I do think we should spend a moment on what he did. I think it was.
Oh, we will. We will.
No, it was Wednesday. No, Thursday. Whatever day of the week it was. Thursday.
6 for 6. Yep. Nope.
In Miami. 6 for 6, 3 home runs, 10 RBIs, gets to 52-52 or 51-51 in that game. I mean, it's utterly absurd. He's been amazing to watch. I think for the Dodgers, the tough thing right now is that's what they kind of have needed him to be. If Shohei Ohtani has like a mediocre week, I don't know that we don't go 2-4, which is like kind of saying something about how the Dodgers are playing right now.
Yeah.
The starting pitching is a mess. Like over the last 15 games, I think the starting pitching ERA for the Dodgers is around 6.6. Yeah. There's just nothing that we can rely on the mound right now whatsoever. Like Flaherty looks good, but like you don't always get him deep into a game, and he's clearly not like a bona fide ace's ace. Yamamoto mostly looks good, but kind of a similar situation where I don't know how far we can extend him yet. And the tough thing is Yamamoto is a guy who's at his best when he gets those extra days of rest. And in this postseason, that might be hard to accomplish. So guys are going to have to find a way to really step up in the rotation. It's probably going to be games 1 and 2, Yamamoto and Flaherty in one order or another. I would think Walker Buehler gets game 3 at this point. From there, it's going to be a whole lot of Landon Knack. Maybe you get something out of Tony Gonsolin. Maybe you get something out of Clayton Kershaw. Maybe Bobby Miller finds the strike zone. I don't know. It's going to be just like, how can we piece together innings? And it doesn't help that the bullpen doesn't look great either. Alex Vesia has given up homers. Daniel Hudson looks horrendous. Like Michael Grove might have to eat innings, which is never a fun sight if you're a Dodger fan. So my hopes are not particularly up. That being said, I do want to touch on like the Dodgers outlook for this week. You have I think it's a 3-game lead on San Diego going into this series. Is it 3 or is it 4?
You got 3.
3. So even if you get swept, you're tied for the division lead. Next weekend, San Diego has to finish their season in Arizona. The Dodgers finish their season in Denver. So I feel pretty good about the Dodgers winning the division. Again, I don't think they get swept. I'd like to see us at least win one of those 3, but it's hard for me to see us doing more than that, as weird as that is to say, because the Padres pitching is just in such better shape than the Dodgers is right now. Now, The other thing that I want to touch on, the way the National League is lining up right now from a wild card perspective, it seems pretty clear that if you're the Dodgers, you want the number 2 seed. Because Milwaukee is going to have the number 3 seed as the third division winner. The number 6 seed is going to be either Arizona or the Mets, meaning that the Padres are going to be either the 4 or the 5. To me, I want to do everything that I can to win the division, get the bye, but not face San Diego.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the perfect week for the Dodgers, for me, is you take 2 out of 3 from San Diego and you lose 2 out of 3 in Colorado. You go 3-3, but you lock up the division. You get that 2 seed, and you play the winner of Milwaukee and either Arizona or the Mets. Now, that's not to say that Milwaukee or Arizona or the Mets can't beat us. I think anybody can beat us, and I will be betting against the Dodgers in the division series regardless. But if we have to play San Diego, I think we're screwed. I just do. So, yeah, I mean, it's not a very positive outlook right now for LA. We basically are just going to have to hit the crap out of the ball every single night to have a chance. And against postseason pitching, that's not usually a recipe for winning a title.
It definitely puts, it definitely sheds a little bit of difficulty to, them winning a championship. No doubt about that. The Phillies right now are going to close the season at home against the Cubs. By the way, they're up 6-0 on the Cubs right now.
Good.
So they're home against the Cubs, and then they finish with a 3-gamer at the Nationals. So the recipe is there for Philly to finish the season pretty strong. And the Dodgers, I mean, again, you're at home against San Diego. That's obviously a tough series. At Colorado, I mean, you've preached it all season, where like the Rockies are bad, but playing in Colorado is a pain in the ass. Like,
yeah, no.
Right,
especially with the Dodgers pitching staff the way it is right now, like you don't want to have to go straight from there to a wild card series. I'll say that, because your pitching could get battered in that series. You're going to need some time.
Yeah, absolutely 100%. So, but like I said, I think, and you touched on this a lot last week. We touched on this a lot last week, where like the Dodgers are just simply going to have to piece together innings with what they have, because they've been absolutely decimated by injuries. And the reality is I think, and here's the thing, I've read a slew of different articles around, and again, it's a bunch of opinion pieces. It's a bunch of all this stuff of just like, all these, what are the power rankings, going into the playoffs and everything like that. Almost every single one I saw had the Dodgers at number 1. Like I think a lot of people view the Dodgers similarly to how I do, to where like, okay, this is a season where nobody in baseball has just kind of taken it by the balls and dominated. Like, nobody's really done that. The Dodgers, their excuse for that is more legit than anybody else's, right? The Dodgers have been hurt all season, right? So if the Dodgers can find a way to pitch, right, they go into the season with a healthy Mookie Betts and a healthy Freddie Freeman, a healthy Ohtani, a healthy Muncy, healthy Will Smith, whatever, healthy Teoscar Hernandez. They go into the playoffs with that lineup, and they are able to piece together innings and compete at least at some sort of a level. They don't need to be shutting everybody out. They just need to keep you in ball games. I think the Dodgers are clearly the best team in baseball if they can pitch in the postseason. That's how I see
it. The problem is that, like, we can't throw that if around as if it's a minor if.
Oh, of course.
Or as if it's a likelihood.
Right.
Like, in terms of our lineup, I mean, the Dodgers lineup is ridiculous, right? I mean, like, you're talking Tommy Edman, Gavin Lux at the bottom of it. I mean, that's, that's pretty absurd. So there's no doubt that the lineup is good enough to win a title.
Yeah.
The concern is, like, in the postseason, like, I'll put it this way, right? When you play the Diamondbacks in the regular season, right? There's a chance that in the first game of that series, you're running into Ryan Nelson You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or like you're running into Bryce Jarvis because
Right.
because there's a weird situation. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if you play the Brewers during the regular season, like you might be facing a rookie in game one. You know
Yeah.
what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
When you run into like Zach Gallen and you run into Merrill Kelly and you run into Eduardo Rodriguez, right? And I'm not saying the Dodgers can't hit these guys, but like we are going to be at a pitching disadvantage against every team in the National League except I would say the Mets and the Brewers. The Brewers starting pitching is not great, but outside of the Mets and the Brewers, like San Diego has a massive advantage on the Dodgers on the pitching side.
Yeah.
And on the offensive side, I don't think the Dodgers' advantage is that large. Philly has a huge advantage over us in pitching. Lineups, I think it's close. Here's the other thing, too. Like, when the Dodgers and Phillies and the Dodgers and Padres go up against each other in the postseason, whose buttholes are going to tighten? Like,
Right.
like who does history tell you is going to have their butthole tighten?
Right.
The Dodgers. Like that's who we are from a culture perspective. And the reason for that is because we haven't done anything about it. Like we continue to employ the same people who clearly do not know how to prepare us for a postseason series and don't know how to handle it once it starts. But there's plenty of time for me to continue with that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll definitely have we'll have a full-blown discussion on that in a couple of minutes. All right, let's give you a score update. Only 4 games tonight, by the way. And some of them are seemingly well, I don't want to say meaningless. One of them is truly meaningless, I think. But the Phillies right now are up 6-1 in the top of the 7th against the Cubs in Philadelphia. That was a game where Nate Pearson had to open for Chicago, and then you had Caleb Killian come in as the de facto starting pitcher, I suppose. Aaron Nola right now 6 innings pitched, 1 earned, 6 hits, 7 Ks. So a real solid outing for Aaron Nola for Philly tonight. They're up 6-1. The Red Sox and Blue Jays right now in Toronto. The Red Sox are up 3-0 in the top of the 5th. The Mariners and Astros right now just getting started. They're in the bottom of the 1st in Houston. It is Bryce Miller and Hunter Brown in that game. This is, I will say this. This is a big series for Seattle because Seattle is not nearly out of the playoff race right now. They're only 2 games back of the wild card with 6 games to go. Who does Seattle have the rest of the way? They're obviously at Houston and then they go home to play Oakland. So the door is pretty, like they can take advantage of the opportunity. They can do their part and put themselves in a decent position to get themselves into the postseason. And we'll discuss this a little bit further later, but just to give, get kind of an idea now, how do you feel right now about Seattle's? Like, obviously they made some improvements, especially offensively at the deadline. It has seemingly improved since they've made those moves. They've jumped up in offensive rankings. They have done better on that side. What do you think right now of their chances of getting into the postseason as we approach the final, the final lick?
Not very good, to be honest.
You don't think so?
I just don't think Seattle has it. And I think this series in Houston is going to be that final punch in the gut for them.
Mm-hmm.
And let's be real, right? If they lose 2 out of 3 in Houston, it's pretty much over. Like you're going into the final 3 games and you're going to be down at least 2 games.
Yeah.
So I think Seattle at this point, like I wouldn't describe them as anything more than a long shot.
Yeah.
Because like they are chasing multiple teams. Like I think they need the Twins to continue to collapse, and they need the Royals to continue to collapse, and they need to go into Houston and win a few games.
Right.
It could happen. Like this has been a crazy season. Like, would I be shocked? No, because the Twins and Royals have played really shitty baseball lately.
Yeah.
But like I would call it a long shot, I think would be accurate.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I'm with you. They're certainly in it, but a lot needs to go right. Seattle and Houston right now, they move to the top of the 2nd. They're still scoreless. And the Giants and Diamondbacks tonight at 9:40 Eastern time. Hayden Birdsong getting the start for San Francisco. Eddie Rodriguez on the bump for Arizona. Just 40 2/3 innings pitched for Eddie Rodriguez. Got over a 5 ERA It's Arizona is going to be an interesting, in an interesting position if they get into the postseason. It certainly isn't a guarantee at the moment, but I think people like their chances of, okay, what are they doing about a playoff rotation outside of Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly? Who's the guy they're going to lean on? Is it going to be Eddie Rodriguez? Is it going to be Jordan Montgomery? We'll really see about that. But that starts a little bit later tonight.
Yeah, the good thing for Arizona is that the Mets and Braves are playing each other the next 3 nights.
Yeah.
So as long as Arizona can tread water this week, they should be fine. Because one of the like if, for example, if the Mets go down to Atlanta and win a couple games, Atlanta's done and Arizona's in. Yeah. Now, if you are like, if Arizona, or I guess if Atlanta starts beating up on the Mets, then I guess things could get a little hairy for Arizona, because Atlanta's theoretically the team that could jump up and take from them. But I don't know. I think Arizona's probably pretty comfortable right now.
Yeah.
Speaking of, and we'll get more into this as we go along, but man, did we see this coming from the Mets? I did not.
No. Oh my God. And we'll certainly discuss that a little bit later on as well, but absolutely not. Absolutely not. With their roster, no way. No, you and I thought that when Pacoda ranked them, what did Pacoda give them as far as the hold on, let me see if I can find it. Here we go. So Pacoda had them at 83 and 79. And we were like, that's really generous.
Yeah.
Really, really generous. But I mean, I don't know. Shows what we know, right? I mean, what the fuck? It's just
shows what anybody knows.
Yeah.
I'll say this: the Mets are a team that has found some mojo and some bite that seems pretty real.
Yeah, but do you really want to listen to them during the postseason?
No.
They wouldn't want.
No. I mean, the thing that could end up getting tough too is man, if you end up with a Mets Padres wild card series,
yeah,
you have to root for the Mets.
Yeah, right.
But no, I mean, there's not a ton to feel good about with having to deal with the Mets.
Yeah, no, I don't think the Mets want to play. I don't think the Mets want the Padres in the postseason. I don't think anybody wants the Padres in the postseason. All right, that does it for the score update. Let's jump into the 1-2-3 inning. Okay, the first out here. We discussed this a little bit before, but the Dodgers and Padres right now seeming to be fighting for the NL West. They have a series that starts tomorrow that, again, is going to end up determining the division. The Dodgers, I think, are in a pretty decent spot right now, but what do we have for pitching matchups? Michael King and Landon Knack in game 1 of that series, Dylan Cease, Jack Flaherty in game 2, and then Joe Musgrove and Walker Buehler in game 3 of that series coming up this week. So, Dalton, this division race, again, the Dodgers with a 3-game lead over San Diego. It certainly is not brutally uncomfortable. I mean, the Dodgers are in a decent spot, but how do you feel about this going in?
I mean, horrible, right? I mean, it's not that I think the Dodgers are going to lose the division. I think it's probably at this point, I feel 80% confident that the Dodgers win the division.
Yeah.
Now, if you listen to me on this show back in July, I gave out Padres 23-1 at FanDuel to win the NL West. So still a pretty good ticket to be holding here, because I think that ticket right now would be about plus 400 or so. I don't want to cash it though. If I can help it, I'd rather not,
Yeah.
Breaking down the game specifically, Michael King has been one of the better pitchers in baseball for a while for San Diego. You look at what he's done down the stretch, an ERA of 2 in September, 2.73 in August, 1.82 in July. He's just been good after good after good. Not really what I want the Dodgers to be running into tomorrow night. Landon Knack, pretty decent numbers overall. I think he's done a lot for the Dodgers this year as far as stemming the tide and eating innings, but that's not a guy you want to be going to in a big spot. 4.85 ERA in September. I don't have a ton of faith in him. I don't think he goes all that far into the game. So you're going to be leaning on the bullpen a lot tomorrow night. The concern is if Michael King deals and the Padres get to Knack and we're running through arms in game 1 of this 3-game series, Guess who's waiting in game 2 on Wednesday? Dylan Cease.
Yeah.
And Dylan Cease has been arguably the best pitcher in the world since the All-Star break. So you're running into Dylan Cease then against Flaherty, who, like, Flaherty's been good, but I would almost rather start Flaherty in one of the other 2 games, like, to give us the best chance of stealing one. And then you bump over to Thursday. Joe Musgrove, I think, is probably the biggest question mark of the 3 for the Padres. Like, he's had his ups and downs, but he's been pitching well lately. And Walker Buehler is kind of a powder keg. Like, he's just not what he was before the sticky stuff came out and before his injury. So, I don't really have a ton of faith. Like, I think we should be underdogs in all 3 of these games, which is why if we can win one of them, I will feel relatively good about it.
Yeah, I listen. I think that all of your points are well taken. Obviously, it's well documented on this show how much I love Michael King. I think some people might be becoming concerned at some point about how much I love Michael King, but nobody needs to convince me about how good he is. And the Padres certainly are in a great spot, right? Like, that's inarguable. They're playing good baseball right now. Their lineup has been good. Their bullpen has been outstanding. Obviously, they have a lot of things going for them. And the Dodgers, again, from a pitching standpoint, have just found themselves in a bit of a rut, especially due to injury. So, but again, I think that this is a series, Dalton, and you touched on this before, where, like, you lose 2 out of 3 to San Diego, you might be okay with that. From a playoff seeding perspective, you might be getting the benefit of the doubt of letting the Padres kick you around in the last week of the regular season, letting the Phillies jump you in the playoff seeding, and then, oh boy, you get an NLDS against the Milwaukee Brewers or the Mets. Like, I think you're feeling okay about that.
I mean, like, I don't feel okay about anything, but that's as okay as I could feel as far as matchup, right?
Well, right. Well, again, let me pose this question to you then. So, again, and you are an optimistic Dodger fan, if I've ever seen one. But, like, and this is going to come off as, like, so, like, just not show worthy almost. But does any of this even matter for the Dodgers based on how you feel about Dave Roberts? Like, is this?
No, I understand the question you're asking. Like, so here's the thing. No matter who the Dodgers are playing, like, I think that there is a legitimate cultural issue with that team. And it is something that's blatantly evident every time we play San Diego. Because when we play San Diego, even in the regular season, you can see it in their dugout that this is like the World Series to them. And I think a lot of Dodger fans and even Dodger players at times have kind of, like, scoffed at that. Yeah. Like, there's been a little bit of an attitude taken about it at times. You know, Mookie Betts made some comments preseason where it's like, hey, we're everyone's World Series. And I mean, he's right, but, like, let's go match that energy then. Like, Will Smith calling Jurickson Profar irrelevant early this season after Jurickson Profar was acting like an asshole during that game. Like, you can tell that the Dodgers have a little bit of cockiness to them, which I think is okay. But when you're playing the Padres in the 2022 NLDS and they're up on the fence in their dugout the whole time and they're pouring out onto the field when they score runs and they're like, you can just see the energy when they get a base hit. I know that part of the Dodgers culture and part of why they're so successful in the regular season is that they're a team that takes things very day by day, doesn't get too high and too low. Like, they try to be a very even keel workman-like team. That's fine for the 162. But once you get into these small samples and another team is like really amped up and you're not, it shows. And it's been a consistent issue for the Dodgers. Like, Mike, if you stay up late this week to watch some Dodgers Padres, you'll see it. Like, you'll see it in the body language. Mm-hmm. Like, a Padres hitter will take a walk and they'll be looking at the dugout like, let's fucking go. Like, you'll see it. A Padres hitter will steal a base and they'll come up like clapping their hands, looking at their dugout, screaming. Yeah. And it's something that Dodger fans mocked a few years ago when the Padres were like kind of this cute thing. It's not cute anymore. Like, now they're better than you are right now. I mean, And look, a lot of that's due to injuries. Like, I don't think they're built better than the Dodgers. I just think that the Dodgers are pretty screwed over right now with injuries. But the reality is, you better be ready to bring the energy.
Right.
And I don't know how many years in a row I have to hear Roberts talk about after a series loss, talk about, well, we just didn't match their energy, and I don't really know what to do about that. I mean, set a standard.
Manager, you're supposed to know what to do about that.
Find a way to set a standard.
Right.
And it doesn't help that I don't trust there to be optimal decision making. I don't trust us to take good, thoughtful at bats when we need to, because that's not valued, and I don't trust us to be able to make adjustments. It's a known thing around baseball that if you come in and tendency break against the Dodgers in a big spot, they won't go away from their scouting report. Like, if you break off of what the Dodgers scouting report says, they will not adjust back. So, I mean, I don't have a lot of confidence in our ability to win in these big spots. I think because our culture is kind of stale, our guys clam up.
Yeah, I'm looking right now to see like who among managers right now. Oh, hold on. Have I seen it? Okay, hold on. I might have found it. Okay, so Dave Roberts Dave Roberts right now is 21st in Major League Baseball in being ejected from games. So, and I guess the reason I bring that up is, and I'm pretty sure people can kind of know where I'm going from this, is that you've brought up a lot of times, Dalton, where like Dave Roberts kind of instills a culture of like, we're all best friends, and everybody's all just, we're puttering around and everything like that. So that's one of the things that as a Yankee fan, I can appreciate about Aaron Boone. Right now, his managerial decisions in games obviously come into question. I think everybody's does at some point. But one thing that I definitely know about Aaron Boone is that he's somebody that'll fire up a clubhouse. Like, he's a guy that's easy to get behind from an energy perspective, and you can see it. I mean, Aaron Boone is one of those guys that jaws the entire game, and you can see it, fully invested. That's one of the complaints that you've made about Dave Roberts of just like, do your forearms ever come up from the towel that's draped over the dugout fence? You know what I mean? Like, does it ever happen that way? So that's why I was curious of just like, how many times has Dave Roberts actually lost his temper and gotten ejected from a game? Now, that's not to say that he doesn't care, but it does kind of stem from, and Dalton, you and I both played, like, it is so obvious that when your team is fired up, at least this is how I felt in my case, when your team's fired up and playing with purpose and there's an instilled culture, there's a full buy-in, there's the whole thing, everybody's dialed in, you just, like, it doesn't take a rocket science to figure it out. You just simply play better. You just do, right? You simply play better. The adrenaline gets going and you play better. So that's kind of why I brought that up of just like, and I honestly, like, I don't know how effective it is genuinely of managers getting thrown out of games into, how that directly correlates to energy within a dugout or within a clubhouse. But I think it certainly says something. Am I wrong?
Yeah. I mean, I think, like, I'll put it this way. I think Aaron Boone is the other opposite of it.
Yeah.
That can become almost cartoonish at times.
Yeah.
But with Roberts, like, I mean, the guy's got a career as in the postseason as a manager, 45-39 in his career. That's 90 points in win percentage worse than his regular season record. And you look at it since 2021 in the postseason, 7-12 over the last 3 years as a postseason manager. Yeah. That's just not acceptable. Like, that's just not acceptable. If you look at what Dave Roberts has done outside of the pandemic year, which you've heard me say it before on this show, like, it is a legitimate World Series title that does not deserve an asterisk. Every team wanted it, blah, blah, blah. That being said, it's also a year that I think was advantageous to the Dodgers because there's less pressure when there's nobody in the ballpark. And if you look at his record in the postseason, outside of 2020, 32-34.
Wow.
There is no 66 game stretch under which it is acceptable to have a losing record as the manager of what he's had over those years. None.
Yeah.
Because it's not like he inherited shit from Don Mattingly. Don Mattingly won the NL West 3 years in a row before Dave Roberts got there and got canned. So he inherited a team that's won 91, 104, 92, 106, 106, 111, and 100 heading into this year in those seasons. That's unacceptable. Like, it's just not good enough. And the fact that we continue to settle for it says not very good things about the culture of our organization.
Yeah. There you go. By the way, just to top off this whole thing, like I said, Dave Roberts ranks 21st in ejections of current managers right now, and that's in 10 years. Every manager behind him has no more than 3 years of experience as a manager. Dave Roberts has 10. Everybody else 3, 2, and 1. Remarkable to me. Just an interesting stat. Okay, let's move to the second out here. So let's move to the American League. The American League wild card is, I think, incredibly interesting, right? Everybody feels confident that the Baltimore Orioles are going to make the playoffs. They're 4 games into the wild card they're in. We have the Tigers and the Royals, who are currently tied in that wild card spot for those 2 wild card spots, and the Twins are a game out. Dalton, who gets in, who gets out? What do you make of this wild card race? Obviously, we touched a little bit on it before. The Mariners are 2 games out, but we don't feel overly confident about them. This looks to me like it's more than likely a 3-team race between these 3 AL Central teams. What do you make of this whole thing?
I think the Tigers are the surest bet, actually, to get in. The schedule they have left, 3 with the Rays, who have kind of all but hung it up this year. I mean, the Rays are always a competitive team, but Tigers should be favored to win those games with the way they're playing. Tigers, for one, are the only one of those 3 teams that's not ice cold. Twins 3-7 in their last 10. Royals 2-8 in their last 10. Twins have kind of just been underwhelming all year. I mean, they just can't get out of their own way. So I want the Twins to grab the last spot because I want the Twins to make the playoffs because I like the Twins. But neither the Twins nor the Royals seem like super poised to earn it. I will say, looking at this last week, Twins are going to host the Orioles, and then the Twins are going to host the Orioles over the weekend. Before they host the Orioles, the Twins are hosting the Marlins. So pretty favorable, right? Because by the time this weekend comes around, Baltimore's not going to be playing for much. Like, the division will be gone. The Yankees will have that, and Baltimore will have clinched the playoffs by then. So Twins have it right there in front of them. You get a full week at home against teams that are not as motivated as you are. Royals are going on the road to Washington, which Washington's not great, but they'll fight, right? And then the Royals finish at Atlanta, which could be a desperate Atlanta team. Either way, that's not going to be an easy place for them to go in and win.
Right.
So I think I give the Twins the nod, even though they're a game back, slightly, to take that last spot. I do want to talk about the Tigers, though, because it's a fascinating team in the sense that they sold at the deadline.
They did.
And yet here they are. They've been completely on fire. And imagine if that rotation still had Jack Flaherty in it.
They've won 6 out of their last 7. They're playing really well right now.
They're just winning and winning. And I love that they called up Jackson Jobe today.
They did. Yeah.
Because that kid's nasty. He's the real deal. And I think he can start a postseason game for them immediately. Now, I don't think that's how you want
prospects in baseball, Jack.
Yeah, I don't think that's how you want him to make his debut. Like, he'll definitely debut before then. And I think they're going to get some meaningful innings out of him. But, like, man, what a guy to have waiting in the wings to be able to call up. So I think the Tigers are going to be feisty, man. I really do. Like, I think they're a team that kind of has some mojo right now at the right time. I think they'll get in as the 5 seed, and I think they're going to give Baltimore hell in the wild card series. Like, I actually kind of like Detroit to sneak out of there.
Yeah, I'm the one thing that I'm curious about with Detroit is, and they're a young team, and I think they're exciting. And again, I always bring up what we thought in the preseason, just because I think it's a good, it's a good gauge of how we feel now. And you and I both said, like, the Tigers are young, but this is a building year for them, right? This is a year to find out what they have. They'll finish, 75 and 87 or something like that, and they'll figure out what they've got. They're not ready yet. And it certainly seems like they've definitely outplayed their expectations. One of the things that's good about Detroit, and it ties into what you said about Jackson Joe being able to just come up and maybe even start a playoff game for them with his skill set. This team pitches. This team is one of the best. They have one of the best overall pitching teams in baseball. They do. Tarek Skubal, I think, is hands down right now the American League Cy Young Award winner. So he's going into the playoffs pitching really, really well, obviously. And the amount of stuff that they've gotten out of some of their pitchers is just, it's insane. Reese Olson has a 3.5 ERA. He's been pitching really well. They've found guys that are just giving them quality innings over and over and over again. Like, the issue that I have with Detroit, and obviously it seems to be very, very black and white, but Detroit has struggled offensively most of the year. Again, this is a young and inexperienced team. Now, that can go one of two ways, right? They're too stupid to know how big the moment is, right? They're too young. They're too arrogant. They're too, whatever. Like, they're too dumb to know how big the moment is. Or it could completely engulf them going into the postseason. They recognize how big this is. They're not a good offensive team to begin with. And despite the fact that they're playing well, the moment consumes them. So that's what worries me about Detroit. However, like, ever since the game in Williamsport, when they played the Yankees, I think I'm like, that's not a team to rule out yet. I've kind of felt that way about Detroit for a while. I kind of felt that way, that this is a team that could get hot. Look, I don't know. I like them. Going into the playoffs, I don't know that you want to see them, because facing Tarek Skubal in a playoff game could be an automatic loss. Like, that's how well he's pitching this year. So I'm with you. I think Detroit, I feel pretty confident about them, and I just simply do not feel confident in the Twins. I just don't. Like, I wish I felt more confident in the Twins than I do, but I just simply don't. I think the Royals right now are a better baseball team.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Twins just haven't really given anybody reason for confidence.
Yeah.
Then again, the Royals are 12 and 18 in their last 30. They have two 7-game losing streaks in the last 2 months. Royals have come back down to earth. So, I don't know. It feels to me like I'll say this. I think Detroit can legitimately be annoying in the wild card round and the NLDS, like you said. Now, once you get into a 7-game series, I think they're a little bit more manageable to deal with, because they're going to have to hit over the course of it. But 3-game series, oh boy, that's tough.
Right, 3-game series, and let's say the playoffs started today, right? The Tigers are slated to play the Orioles in a 3-game set in Baltimore, right? I don't feel overly confident that Baltimore can win that series. I don't, right?
No.
Especially with the way, and I've said this a bunch, especially with the way that Baltimore has been playing over the last 2 months. Baltimore has, since the middle of the summer, Baltimore has really struggled. I mean, the Yankees were terrible for 6 weeks, and the Orioles have had every opportunity to just take the AL East and run away with it. And they didn't, because they were awful in the middle of the summer too. So, and they really haven't recovered. You go into a series against Detroit with as good of a pitching staff as they do, I don't know that Baltimore wants to see them in the postseason. I just don't.
Yeah, no, totally agree.
So, interesting stuff there. So, if you're making a prediction right now, right? All your Twins want out the window today. If you're making a prediction of who gets in those 2 wild card spots, who are you saying right now between the Twins, Tigers, and Royals?
I'm going to go Tigers and Twins. And I know it seems like it's homerism because I like the Twins and I'm about to move to Minnesota and blah, blah, blah. But it's the bigger reason is the schedule. The Twins are at home all week in winnable matchups.
Yep.
I think they can get some good crowds at Target Field, get some momentum behind them, and potentially sweep the week. Like that's the kind of week I think they have in front of them potentially.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas it's a tough, like Kansas City's a team that's not playing well. That's going to have to go on the road. And I think one thing about the Nationals is like they're a team that's competing. They're not good, but they compete, right? You could tell they care by how they handled the CJ Abrams situation.
Yeah.
So I think, like I'll put it this way: I think the most likely scenario in my mind is Royals go 3-3, Twins go like 5-1. That's how I think it goes, which would get the Twins in. But I think the Tigers are the one that I feel best about.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. There's just something, and listen, I like the Twins too, right? I have family from Minnesota, and I always root for the Twins, and the Twins are never a threat for me because the Yankees own them in the postseason, and I don't ever worry about them. But I don't have a better reason other than this. Sometimes it just comes from your gut, Dalton.
Yeah.
I just kind of feel like the Twins are just going to bomb this week. Like I get that feeling that it's going to be Tigers Royals. I just do. So again, I wish I had a better reason than that, but I don't. I just, because everything that you're saying makes perfect sense. I just have a feeling that it'll be Tigers Royals and not Tigers Twins. However, I am on 100% on the same page with you. I think the Tigers are going to make the playoffs. I do. And honestly, what a story. That's a great story. I mean,
unbelievable story.
If you would have asked us a month ago if the Tigers were making the playoffs, you and I both would have said absolutely the fuck not. We would have given the Mariners and the Red Sox, I think, a chance over them a month ago or even 3 weeks ago. 100%. So very interesting stuff there. Okay, let's go to the third out. The Braves and the Mets right now. They are fighting for that last wild card spot. Again, Arizona is tied with the Mets right now. I like Arizona. I think they're a good baseball team. I think they'll get in. The Mets and the Braves will beat up on each other, and Arizona will find themselves in. The Padres obviously are going to get in. Everybody else in the National League is eliminated. It is just the Diamondbacks, Mets, and Braves fighting for that spot. But let's focus right now on the Mets and the Braves. Obviously, I think the Mets are playing better baseball right now. The Braves are 2 games back of that last wild card spot. The way that you phrased the topic to me, Dalton, when you brought it up was, can the Braves pull off a miracle and take over that last wild card spot for the Mets? So I'll phrase it to you that way. Can the Braves pull off a miracle and take over the Mets for that last wild card spot?
So I think by far the most important thing is tomorrow night. They have to win tomorrow night. I think they need to manage tomorrow night as if it is game 7 of a series.
Yeah.
Because if they lose game 1 of that series, you are now down 3 games to the Mets with no chance of coming back over the course of that series. With a Mets team that's going to go play Milwaukee over the weekend, and Milwaukee will have no reason to do anything but sit their best starters. Right. Milwaukee is not going to – Milwaukee's going to be resting guys because they know they're headed for a wild card series, right? Yep. So, in order for the Braves to give themselves a chance, they have to win tomorrow night. Rookie Spencer Schwellenbach's going to be pitching. He's been pretty good. Not incredibly consistent, but he's been pretty good. Back on June 27th, 7 shutout innings against the Mets. So there is some history of him pitching well in this matchup. They're going to need him to. But I think Brian Snitker needs to be prepared to manage tomorrow night, Tuesday night specifically, as if it is game 7 of the World Series.
Yep.
If you can win that game, now you're within 1. And if you take one of the now you're in a spot where you're giving yourself at least a chance going into the weekend. Now, realistically, what does Atlanta need to do to win this division? They're going to need to find a way to sweep. Yeah. That's that's what it's going to take.
Yeah.
If you sweep, you're up a game going into the weekend. Mets are going to start seeing those buttholes tighten, right? Milwaukee. that's when things I think can get really tense in New York. Looking at what, like, it's going to be Severino tomorrow night. He's been okay against Atlanta. 5 innings, 2 runs back on July 25th, back on May 12th, 5 innings, 2 runs again. I think if you tell a Mets fan right now he's going to go out and throw 5 innings and give up 2 runs tomorrow night, they probably feel pretty good.
Yeah.
It's weird because I don't want to sit there. Like, I know it's a 3-game series, but if the Braves lose tomorrow night, it's pretty much over. But if they win tomorrow night, you're within 1 game and you're sending Chris Sale to the mound on Wednesday.
Yeah. I think the pitching matchups in this series are really, really interesting, right? Because you already touched on game 1 with Luis Severino and Spencer Schwellenbach. Game 2, you're getting David Peterson and Chris Sale, who have both. I mean, Chris Sale has been phenomenal. David Peterson's been really good for the Mets as well. And then again, that last matchup is Max Fried and Sean Manaea, who have both been very good this season. So it's going to be something interesting. That's a very interesting point you bring up as well of how important that game is tomorrow. And I agree. That's a game that they can't afford to lose. It's a game they can't afford to lose because, and again, keep this in mind too. Atlanta is going to, after they finish with the Mets, right? They're going to have to play Kansas City, who's going to be playing desperation baseball potentially of trying to keep a postseason spot. Yep. While the Mets go and play Milwaukee, like you said, who Milwaukee is just chilling right now. They don't have to do shit. They've got the division locked. Their playoff seed is in today. Like, they don't have to move. So they're not playing for shit for the next week. So the Mets might go into that series and just kind of walk all over them. And it's interesting because the Mets started the season against the Brewers at Citi Field. Now they're ending the season against the Brewers in Milwaukee. I'm curious to see how fiery that series is going to be. Especially, we had the thing with Rhys Hoskins and Jeff McNeil and all that stuff. That was pretty interesting to talk about early on. But I would go as far to say that this is the most important series in baseball this week. Like, I think this is the series to look out for because, again, everybody kind of expected where the Braves were going to be. They are clearly, again, like they were bitten by the injury bug, right? They lost Strider for the year. They lost Acuna for the year. Like, obviously those things don't help. And I think if those 2 guys are healthy, we could very easily be having a different conversation today than we are now. But this was a team with high expectations. They have not fulfilled those expectations. I don't think anybody would have believed us if we said the Braves simply were not going to make the playoffs, especially to the Mets, right? So they're going to go into this with absolute desperation. Now, let me bring this up to you. And I don't know that it matters when it gets to this point in the year, but is there something a little bit different of how both of these teams are treating this series, right? At least from an organizational standpoint, right? The Braves come in with great high expectations. They have a chance to still make the postseason. Injuries kind of derailed their year, but they still have a chance to get in. The Mets seem like they're almost playing with house money. Nobody expected them to be here. Does that play a factor in this at all, or do you think that at this point in the year it just simply doesn't matter?
So I think it plays a factor if the Mets get out to a lead, right? And like if the Mets win game 1, but I think Atlanta's going to be fired up for that series. Like, Truist Park's going to be jumping. And if the Braves can convince themselves that they're the underdogs and that like they're the team that's kind of the upstart here, which I don't think is that difficult of a thing for them to convince themselves of, then from an energy standpoint, like I think the Braves can get there. But like tomorrow night is an unbelievable night as a baseball fan. Like, if you're a fan of, like, let's say the Texas Rangers, right? Mm-hmm. And like you got no dogs in the fight left. Tomorrow night is a great night to just sit and watch Mets Braves. That's going to be finishing right around when Dodgers Padres starts, and then just sit and watch Dodgers Padres. The next 3 nights to be able to do that, I mean, that's awesome, right? Yeah. So but again, I cannot stress enough to the extent to which I think it's all about what happens tomorrow night in that series.
Yeah, no, it's certainly going to be interesting. and we will see where that goes. Okay, that's it for the 1-2-3 inning. Let's give you another live score update. The Phillies still with a 6-2 lead over the Cubs in Philadelphia in the bottom of the eighth. They're threatening right now, also second and third, one out. So the Phillies up on the Cubs right now. The Red Sox here with a 3-0 lead over the Blue Jays in Toronto in the top of the seventh. The Mariners leading 1-0 over the Astros in Houston in the bottom of the third. We'll see how that plays out as well. That's an important game. This is a very important, like I said before, a very important series for Seattle if they want any chance of getting into the postseason. And then obviously later on tonight, the Giants and Diamondbacks in Arizona, Hayden Birdsong and Eddie Rodriguez on the bump for that one. A couple of quick things that I want to touch on before we get into the hot corner. I know we're running a little bit long. So we just saw as well, obviously Shohei Ohtani becomes the first player in MLB history to go 50-50, 50 home runs, 50 stolen bases. Obviously that is a massive deal that sparked so much conversation nationally of Ohtani being better than this guy and Ohtani being better than this guy and Ohtani being this all time. I've always listened, and I don't know about you, Dalton, I've always hated like all time conversations when it comes to baseball, because I just don't think that it's possible that you can make comparisons like that. Like I've heard it, like people are so passionate about saying Shohei Ohtani is so much better than Babe Ruth. And I'm like, okay, like I don't necessarily disagree, but like you have to right. Like you have to keep it. Babe Ruth played 100 years ago, like legitimately 100 years ago. It was like baseball was, Babe Ruth was hitting a ball of yarn. Like it's different. It's just a different game. So yeah, Shohei Ohtani is better than Babe Ruth, but like, I don't know. Can you shed some realism on this conversation when it comes to Ohtani and the all-time conversation? Certainly he's great, but can you shed a little bit of something, a little bit of realism here?
I mean, I just can't take those conversations all that seriously. Like here's the reality of it, right? If Shohei Ohtani were to go back into the 1920s, he would destroy the world, right?
Yeah.
Like, but then again, if Nick Gordon were to go back into the 1920s, he'd be the best player in the world. Like right. The reality is that baseball has changed a lot. We've gotten a lot better at how we train athletes, right? Like, yeah. So to me, like if you're going to go that route with it, it's just kind of an exercise in like stupidity and a waste of time. So like I just don't really put a ton of stock into it. Like yeah,
I can't.
Comparing players over eras like that. It's the same way in the NBA, right? Like when fans will be like, Bill Russell's the greatest player ever. He won title, like all these titles, all
11 titles. Yeah, right.
Like, okay, but like when he played, the league had 6 teams in it, right? Like we're talking about a totally different world. And I don't correct me on that. I have no fun. I'm just throwing shit out.
No, I know. I'm with you.
Like we're comparing worlds that are completely different from one another.
Not
right.
Even.
Like if you want to have a fun comparison, let's compare Ohtani and Judge this year, right? Like,
yeah,
if they were in the same league, I think Judge gets the nod for MVP. Mm-hmm. But like, it's really fun to look at their season stacked up against one another and be like, yeah, like which guy would you rather have in your lineup? I don't know. I think it's somewhat close, which is crazy to say. Like, because either one of them, if you look at them individually, you would think, oh, there's no way there's another player in baseball that's close.
Oh yeah. Well, and I think people have kind of gotten caught up in that, don't you think? Because like you see, like once Ohtani broke 50-50, the amount of people that I heard on social media and on Twitter and all that shit, the amount of people that I heard say it's the best offensive season of all time, and I'm like, it's not even the best offensive season this year. I'm like, what are you talking? Like, it's close between him and Judge, and I understand that whole conversation, but like you look at some of the years that like Barry Bonds had, Like, come on. Like, it's not even close. And I love Ohtani, but it's not close.
Yeah. I mean, if you are like a stolen base guy
Yeah.
and you just fucking love stolen bases, then like, sure. You know what I mean?
You just fucking love stolen bases.
I mean, look, he's got 53 homers and 55 stolen bases.
That's
like
remarkable.
It's crazy. That being said, when you like, I'm looking at the baseball reference, the stat head reference between the two, right? Like the WAR is like 10-8 roughly. Home runs is 55-53. RBIs are about 15 apart. Stolen bases is 55-10. But other than that, Judge has an edge in most categories, just down the board. Now, like next season, if Ohtani is doing this while pitching, that's a different conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But from a pure offensive standpoint, we've got a clear number one in Judge. We've got a clear number two in Ohtani. But I think the distance between number one and number two is a lot tighter than the distance between number two and number three.
Yeah. So the other thing I want to bring up as well before we go into the hot corner was that the Reds fired their manager, and we don't have to spend too much time on this. But I think it brings up kind of an interesting discussion. So they fired David Bell, who was their manager over the past several seasons. He was hired in 2019. He spent 6 years as the Reds manager, had a 473 winning percentage. He was 409 and 456, went 76 and 81 this year as the Reds manager. Do you think this was kind of deserved? Because this was a young team. Obviously, I think people had some maybe lofty expectations for them because of how exciting this team could have been. Ellie De La Cruz, Spencer Steer, Matt McClain, got like actual real guys that everybody gets excited about to see play. But this really wasn't a team, I don't think, that had much playoff aspirations this year, as far as I'm concerned. But what do you make of this whole thing? Or is this something that you just kind of brush off the shoulder?
I mean, I think there's kind of two different schools of thought, right? Like for one, it's hard for me to look at it and be like, wow, he's done a terrible job. He deserves to get fired, right?
Yeah, right. Yep.
This is a team that, like, you look at this roster, it's a young roster. It's a team that should be getting better. Right around 500 feels like a reasonable place for them to be. They're a little bit south of that right now, right? Yeah. 76 and 81. What I think it comes down to is this team went 82 and 80 last year. And I think it's fair to say, hey, our expectation is at least be that again.
Yeah.
And they've been worse. Like, I don't think there was any argument for why this team should be worse than last year. So, I do think it's fair to look at the Reds this season and say that's not acceptable. That's a disappointment. Now, you're talking about a team that's probably going from 82 and 80 to like 78 and 84 is probably realistically where they'll end up, right? Like that's within a couple bounces of being the same team. But I do think it's fair to say, like, look, our expectation was 500 this year. We're not meeting that expectation. And that's with like the healthiest Hunter Green over a full season I get Hunter Green has been healthy the whole year, but like this is as healthy as he's been. This is with Ellie De La Cruz, like really kind of figuring it out at this level. Like if you're going to get 261 out of him with 65 stolen bases and 25 homers, like that's a better Ellie De La Cruz than you had last year.
Yeah. Like
your stars have actually, like the big stars have actually gotten better. I don't know. I kind of get it, right? Like a lot of their guys, some of them kind of regressed, some of them got better, but I think it's fair as if you're the Reds management to expect, hey, we set a new standard last year and we didn't meet it now. Let's see if we can get another voice in there if it changes things.
Yeah, there've been a lot of changes within that organization. I think since then they seem to have completely overhauled the roster. They moved a lot of old guys out, a lot of new guys in his tenure. But I don't know that you really felt that much confidence that he was going to change the culture, right? It almost seemed like it was a bridge manager, at least from my perspective. Maybe people in Cincinnati felt different, but at least for me, it did kind of feel like, all right, this is a 500 guy. This is a guy that is going to maybe introduce some young guys, but then you got to hand over the keys to somebody else that's more prepared to win. So that's just my take on the whole thing. But all right, Dalton's hot corner. Put some more money in your pocket. Close us out, Dalton. What do you have for us?
Yeah, the Padres are small underdogs tomorrow against the Dodgers, and they shouldn't be. So
there you go.
San Diego minus 105 on the money line tomorrow. It pains me, but like I'm taking Michael King over Landon Knack right now pretty confidently. I'm taking the Padres bullpen over the Dodgers bullpen right now pretty confidently. I'm taking the Padres mojo over the Dodgers mojo right now pretty confidently. And look, the Dodgers had an amazing game yesterday with Shohei and Mookie going back to back to walk a game off. And like I'm not saying that the Dodgers have bad mojo, but this is a Padres team that's 40-16 in their last 56 games.
Yeah,
like this is the hottest team in baseball for months now. There's just no reason they should be an underdog in that game against Landon Knack. So San Diego, you can get them at, let's see what the best line is. You get them at plus 104 right now at FanDuel. I think that's a great play.
Yeah. Yep. Can't argue with that, especially with my boy Michael King on the bump. Totals 8.5. I might smash that under too.
The only thing that concerns me there is the Dodgers bullpen. Like the Dodgers bullpen and starting pitching, San Diego might give you 7 or 8 themselves tomorrow. So I don't know. Also, the Dodgers have had a kind of a mixed history against Michael King. There have been games this year where they've roughed him up. I don't think that'll happen tomorrow, but it has happened.
Yeah. I don't know. Yankees got to find a way to get him back, man. I miss him too much. I will be singing his praises forever. I just will be. I am a Michael King stan. All right. That does it for us. Dalton, any last words before we part from the beautiful people? By the way, just because that's what we do on this show, the Bills right now are up 34-3 at halftime against Jacksonville. They are killing the Jaguars right now. Josh Allen has 4 passing touchdowns, right? He's 22 of 28 for 247 and 4 touchdowns. So
yeah, I mean, at some point, Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence are both kind of they got it. Like, there's got to be some hot seats, some seats heating up in Jacksonville, and it's probably Peterson that would go. So
yeah, Trevor Lawrence, I want him to be good so bad. I had such high hopes for him. Obviously, everybody did, but yeah, has not been a pretty one so far for him. But all right, that does it for us. That's Dalton Brown. I'm Mike Guido. This is the Bicoastal Baseball Podcast on the Grid Network, the only exclusive baseball podcast on the Grid Network. Every Monday, 8 o'clock Eastern. Make sure you tune in again on Twitter and on YouTube. Make sure you tune in for that. Playoffs are upon us, baby. Let's go.